Great, well thanks very much on the last leg of the journey. So this is one of my, and I think C2 is probably one of the most favourite topics. And in fact, it was Peter, I think I was speaking to earlier, made a really good comment, which I'm going to use if it's okay with you, which was, when you speak to technology companies, they'll go, but our platform is like, 99% availability, that's great. And he went, yes, it's the 1% that kills us. It's the 1% that could cost us a lot of money or creates a lot of noise. And it's that we need, insurance against. So I'm delighted to actually have on stage with me Rebecca Harhoff from Jones Lang LaSalle. You like to be called Bex?
Yeah.
So if you hear me say Bex, that's what I'm referring to. What I'd like to do is actually, if it's okay, if you want to introduce yourself in terms of your role and also JLL. Some people may not know who JLL are. And I think a little bit of your previous company as well might be of interest.
Bex Harhoff, I'm the head of business excellence and transformation at Jones Lang LaSalle. Jones Lang LaSalle is a global leader in commercial real estate services. We are a Fortune 500 company, 80 countries, 115,000 employees. Critically, we are 240 years old. So following on from Cameron's point, you can imagine how good our data is. So at JLL, I run the transformation team. At HSBC, I was the head of automation, which was robotics, attended and unattended technologies. Took over the team on the first day that the UK went into lockdown during COVID and had a very steep learning curve, but I think actually and probably why I'm up here talking today, really critical in terms of, I don't think I've ever seen a use case where RPA and technology was as critical to the business, but actually had a really important people element. And we were processing, for example, bounce back loans. So the day it went in, it was personal loans, repayment of mortgages, and we simply couldn't hire people, we couldn't train people in order to upskill, to manage those processes and the volume of demand coming through. So I think we built a whole ton of bots. We were a Blue Prism shop at the time to manage 20-fold increase in use cases coming through over a weekend. So again, I think all of that has very much coloured what I'm going to say today, much more than my JLL experience. At JLL, we run a fairly small RPA shop, so about, just check the details for the team, 35 processes, 70 to 80 production bots, 20 bailback bots, 1.2 million transactions a year, but at HSBC we were 1,000 bots and 20 million transactions a year. So I think we might have been the largest BP gig at the time.
Great, thank you very much. So starting off with that, actually, so when you were thinking about your HSBC days, but also JLL, and you were starting to scale, what was the thing that was worrying you, especially about these things then scaling, so looking ahead? What kept you and the business up at night?
So I think a couple of things. I'll focus on what we want to happen and then what doesn't happen. So clearly, and I think there's been a lot of conversation today, we want to enhance the customer experience. We want to manage control, and we must focus on cost optimization, margin optimization, and revenue growth. And I think Clive was saying, it is huge about giving time back to the business. So those are the three things that we must do to be successful. In terms of what keeps me up at night is actually not delivering on those three objectives. And I think the biggest one is around operational control. So working with tech, and this has been, I'm not in technology, so I'm in a separate team which runs no code. I think we approach automation quite differently to the technical teams. The technical teams seem to be very excited about product. We are excited about product, but actually my boss at Jones Lang LaSalle is the head of the global service centres. So it is his team that is actually managing the processes. It is his team that I'm doing the transactional work for. And if we get it wrong, it is his team that is responsible for the risk. So I think actually I have probably a much higher sensitivity and concern about risk and getting it wrong, production issues and reputational risk. Having come from banking, heavily regulated, you can imagine 20 million transactions a year. Only one of those has to be wrong, and there is really, really significant reputational risk. So I think my big issue is the production management, which is where we brought C2 in. I think for us, we're using automation anywhere. I don't think we had as big a need for this at HSBC, but I think, hey, the market was less mature, the expectation was less mature, and we actually had a huge team managing it. But actually now we're starting from scratch and we're building it correctly, but the concerns are still the same. I only need one transaction to go out and cause a breach, and then actually I will be spending the next year fixing the ecosystem. So for us, very much it's about operational control. There are all the other benefits that people have spoken about. I'm delighted that we're going to reduce our operating costs. I'm delighted that we're going to use our licenses more. But really, for me, it's making sure that we, from an operational risk perspective, are not in the papers causing any problems to our clients.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, a lot of people have mentioned agentic, but just like you said, people get excited about technology.
Yeah.
So how do you ensure that when people are coming to you and your team going, we've just seen this fantastic tech,
yeah,
everyone's using agents, why aren't we using agents, all of that kind of stuff. How do you sort of make sure they keep their feet on the ground and you've got the right support in place? Because as you mentioned, I think when last time we met, you made a very good point in that you said, it's great that people get excited about technology and they want to do pilots and so on, but the danger with that is when it works and people do get excited, it will scale. And it's not so much the scaling that's the issue, it's the fact that it becomes a critical process at that point, a critical technology.
Yeah.
So how do you pull people back and what do you get them to think about before it's too late?
So, and I think Cameron also talked about it before, which I liked, which is 20, 30 years ago, it was ERP, whoop whoop, it then became .com, whoop whoop. And the advent and the introduction of new tech actually, in my view, was quite slow. At the moment, it is going exponentially. So but literally every meeting I go to, it's like, oh, there's another workflow, there's another this, there's another that. And the issue for us, back to point one, is if that just comes in with everyone getting really delighted about how exciting the tech is, everyone's putting in the tech, and yet I become responsible for the operational risk. So what we've actually done is we've gone and built a framework where we have, and it's in a circle, everyone can see the 6 segments, but what most people focus on, the business units focus on how the tool looks, the bells and whistles, it's really exciting, you can do this, it's so clever. Tech, quite excited about that, more focused on the architecture. The 4 things that, in my experience, most of the other people we're talking to are not thinking about or not excited about are resourcing, and I'll give you some examples which we had to stop last year. So resourcing, how you're going to deploy it. Standards and governance, which again, I think Clive this morning was saying that actually C2 has enabled them to improve actually the structure and the configuration of their bots in order to be more effective. So actually building them in a sensible way is also really important because you've got upgrades, you've got reusability, which costs. We look at production management, which is queuing, early alerting, stopping things going wrong, bots failing over. So I think at HSBC at any point in time, I think we literally had about 25%, 250 bots out of production on any one day. But the estate was so large that we simply couldn't get that up faster because of all the backlog and everything else we had to do. And then the last one is total cost of ownership. So the way that we have stopped it is we have drawn a box, we've drawn a circle with 6 segments, and the minute anyone comes to us, I go in, and I am the harbinger of doom. I mean, it's not an entirely joyous role to play, but I go in and I'm like, we literally can't consider any of these things unless you consider all of these things. So I think we were talking before, we had a really exciting agentic RPA solution coming in this time last year, which came from tech. And I sat down with the CIO and I was like, you need all of these things. And the CIO said, yes, yes, yes. And everyone carried on going, like the business carried on going, procurement were there with a pen, they were going to sign it, tech were there with a pen. And then I said to them, like, where are your resources for deploying this? And they said, well, we don't have a training course available yet, we'll get you one. And I'm like, well, that doesn't help because I've signed the contract and I'm now paying for it, so I can't deploy it. And I was like, where are your resources? And they said, well, the west coast of America in San Francisco. And I was like, well, what's the average day rate of consulting? They were about $2,000 a day. And I was like, but all the use cases are in India, where the average headcount cost is like 15 grand. I'm like, unless they can deploy it in 7 days, we've totally burst the total cost of ownership and the business model. So it's those sorts of questions that we actually try and make sure that actually there's no value deployed. It doesn't matter how clever the tool is. If you can't build it in the right way, it's useless. If you can't support it in the right way, it's useless. And actually, if you've got everyone going off building their own things, reusability is a massive opportunity with robotics. So actually, we have a whole reusability library. We're seeing this. So we're using Mendix at the moment for workflow. All of low code, no code, part of the value prop is reusability. So I just go in, to answer the question, I just go in with this circle and I'm like, we can't even have a conversation until you've literally talked about these bottom 4 things. And we are refusing to bring on products now that don't meet that profile.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah. Excellent. So just going back to what you said a little bit earlier, so the 3 things. One of the things was like time back to business and savings.
Yeah.
And especially with agents. I know that's one of the things I always, when I'm speaking to clients and at other conferences, one of the questions I ask is, well, how do you demonstrate the value of the agent? You've got this fantastic technology. How do you demonstrate the ROI to be able to deploy it? And honestly, I've not had a single answer apart from the fact, well, it's a productivity tool. I said, oh, it's like a business case for Microsoft Excel. I get it. Yeah. So how do you go about demonstrating value? What type of things do you take into account when you're trying to demonstrate the value for a particular sort of technology?
I'm really struggling with AI, really struggling. So we've come up with 2 concepts, which are functional use cases, where it's a process which has a large number of people and it's all doing high transactional volume in a large number of people. So accounts payable, invoice processing, lease abstraction. So our shared services organisation's about 6,000. So we've got some fairly people-intensive processes. So they're functional use cases, and we have a whole calculation logic, which I think is fairly standard. We look at time and motion, the number of minutes, we multiply it by the number of people, we take it out by the number of working hours per year. So we come up with what is an FTE equivalent. So that's how we manage like the robotics use cases. We're struggling more with the generative AI, sort of GPT type things. So for those, they're coming out as a productivity gain. We're not building those into a business case. And I think that's going to become a challenge over time. I'm trying really hard to figure out how we translate it into something. And we were talking about this earlier with Peter, I don't think like saying everyone is working 2 minutes less a day a week becomes anything meaningful. It's Parkinson's law, time typically expands, and are people 2 minutes more productive? I'm not sure, do 2 minutes more work. So I think what we're trying to do with the generative AI, agentic stuff is actually begin to profile who is using it, and then how do you look at the total FTE within a team. So let's say you've got a team of 30 and everyone's doing 15 minutes a day. How do you aggregate that to an FTE to take out the capacity? And this is not, for us, it's not role elimination, it's growth. So how do we absorb more growth? So I think those are the 2 ways that we look at the capacity creation. The other one, I think, is the total cost of ownership. So we're really trying to get more to a total cost of ownership model, which is probably where for us C2 plays in. And we look at everything. We look at tech resources, and we look at it at a platform level. So it would be for us Automation Anywhere, it would be Mendix, it would be Alteryx, it would be da-da-da. So we look at what's the tech infra costs, what's the dev costs, internal, external, what's the license cost. We then look at the capacity creation, turn that into a dollar value, and we try and translate that into an ROI. So we're trying to build those out for all the tools. But certainly I think for C2, I think I've got a team of about 7, what we call digital worker managers at the moment, who are doing the early alerting, queue management, So we're going to justify the C2 investment off the basis of both taking out capacity in terms of people resources, but also license optimization, utilization. So it's a number of things, but ultimately we have to be very, very commercial about the money that we spend.
Perfect. By the way, I've got a couple more questions. Does anyone have any questions or even comments that resonate with what Bex is saying? We do have a shy
It's all right,
crowd here.
it's 5 o'clock on a Thursday.
Drinks, I can see drinks will be coming out shortly, all right. The next one, actually, this one's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Are there particular metrics or stories that resonate most with leadership when showing automation impact?
So for us, cost optimization. So I think we've all talked a bit about giving capacity back. So we do two things at JLL. So we talk about giving capacity back to the business, but that enables the business to move more work to the offshore teams, which actually means that our more front and middle office teams can actually go out and sell more work. So we're trying to actually create a causality between robotics in an offshore centre enabling revenue growth literally at the front end. And that's partly because we've got a fairly sort of, so having come from banking, very clear front, middle, back office, certainly property is not that mature. So actually it's certainly the cost optimization. We use big numbers, which again, I think the fact we can even say we've got sort of 100,000 robotics transactions per month, everyone's a bit like, oh, that's really exciting. Like, we don't know the denominator. So actually it could be that we've done 100,000 out of like millions, but actually big numbers like that. The other one that we've just made up quite recently is what we're calling a digital worker equivalent. And it's a way to try and articulate the digitized work volume as a sort of percentage of a combined human and digital workforce. So we're sort of calling it liquid workforce. So what we've done is we've figured out, so we only started, unlike everyone else, we only started RPA in 2022. So we've gone back and figured out what are all the solutions that we've put in over the last 3 to 4 years. So we've got robotics, we do a lot of user-defined applications, so Python, VBA, Alteryx, teeny tiny. So we're trying to figure out what's all the human equivalent capacity that's come out of those solutions. And then we're aggregating that to an FTE equivalent, which we're calling digital worker equivalent. We're then adding that onto the total headcount, and then we're taking the digital worker equivalent over the denominator of the people and the digital worker to come up with a percentage. And that is quite important. So actually we're now using that to start driving gamification across the business services, because again, it's like, oh, well, look, finance, you've only done 3% of digital worker equivalent, and yet you represent 50% of the business. And whenever we go to a conference, everyone's like, oh, it's all in finance. So again, we're trying to do some quite simple gamification with a metric we can manage. Back to Cameron's point, our data really is horrible and it is so manual. So we're trying to keep metrics that we can manage, report on a frequent basis and track. There are obviously huge flaws in this logic before everyone wants to point them out, but one of which is it's a static data point. So we can track the headcount increase. The capacity we create is at the moment the solution goes live. So it doesn't account for, oh, look, we've had more volume in and we've just added on a few bots to manage the increase in volume. It doesn't take into account the fact that people have stopped using it or anything like that. So I think where we see the value of C2 is we really want to have a very, very accurate what is the value of the tech investment. So those are things. And then I think we should talk a bit about like definitely client processing, turnaround times, like how do we enable the usual SLAs and the business metrics. But really, I think, as everyone said before, for us, it's like how many issues have we caused, an incidents, and where's the cost optimization and the capacity reinvestment.
Perfect. So I'm going to be a little bit selfish here.
Yeah.
Based on what we showed you today,
Yeah.
what excites you the most and why?
Okay.
Now, I'm putting you on the spot because
that's
you've
fine.
only just seen it
Yeah.
and you've not had a lot to
So
think about.
I love data and I like the narrative, and I'm really excited about technology. So, and I started off doing SAP config many years ago. I find it really, really exciting. And I think being at the start of a journey with JLL, it's exciting for us. So even like at HSBC, there was no way I would have even attempted to try and introduce like a digital worker equivalent. Like we had thousands of bots, like to go and even get, again, it preceded my taking on the role. So I joined I took over the team in 2020. We had also probably been going since about 2015. So it would have been really, really impossible to engineer the transparency in the orchestration to turn that into something meaningful. I mean, HSBC Ops was like 40,000 people. It was such a big organisation. So I think our size enables us to do it really puristically, and that's really exciting. So I think I've already drawn a diagram. So at the moment we're putting C2 on RPA, which is going to be my step one. I've got UDAs everywhere, so we can't even justify, our processes are so fragmented. So we've got 80 countries. No one's ever really transformed JLL on any serious level. So most of our solutions are too small to even justify the investment of robotics. And that even comes down to like Microsoft Power Automate. Like these are tiny, tiny applications we're putting in which are fingers and thumbs. So I'm running loads of risk around the UDAs. So I think when Tobias today mentioned that we can put C2 on Python, like, oh my God, that's just going to be a game changer for us because I've got 200 applications. I've got no idea where they are. I've got no idea who's touching them. The operational risk is keeping me up at night. So that's a big issue. And then I think for us as well, we're doing so much tactical digitization. So we've got, like we talked, I was talking to someone today about finance. I can't remember who, I can't remember earlier. Will from McDonald's, we're talking about the big finance transformation. We're not doing big ERP implementation, we're doing really fragmented tech. So actually the ability to translate that into an end-to-end for us is also really exciting. So I'm really excited. I think it's been a great presentation. I'm really excited about the product. I have the usual questions of how long is it going to take and how much is it going to cost? So I'm a little bit cynical of it. It looks so easy. I know it's not going to be, despite what you tell me. But no, I'm really excited about it because I think actually we've all got an opportunity as people who care about technology and care about being commercial and doing it well. We've now got some tools that will enable us to do it, but actually demonstrate that we're doing it, and where we're not doing it, actually, we can be held accountable to go and fix it. Like, we presumably all care about doing a good job, but we've never had the insights or the transparency to hold ourselves to that account.
Perfect.
So I'm very excited.
Excellent. Couple more questions. In terms of the business continuity, what steps have you taken to ensure critical processes keep running, even when unexpected issues arise?
Okay, so number one, have a BCP plan for every bot, okay? So every process. So when I went into HSBC, so I spent a long time in banking. Banking is very heavily regulated and actually you get into a lot of trouble if you don't get it right. So when I took over automation at HSBC, there were no BCP plans for anything. And I was just like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. So the first thing we did was we went in and we actually defined a BCP plan. Now the BCP plans for everything were revert to manual, but at least we understood quite how much FTE we needed to revert to manual. I think we defined the critical processes. So I think for me, number one is figure out how big an issue you're sitting on. So that's what we've done. We've actually built a whole SharePoint site, which is to manage the recertification of the BCP plans. So every 6 months, every solution we put into production, whether it's UDA, RPA, the processor or the product, the owner of the solution must go and certify, yes, I still use it, or no, I don't. And yes, my BCP plan is still valid. So for me personally, that makes me less accountable because otherwise I'm managing all the risks. So they need to take some accountability. We have a really good production management team, so our digital worker team. They are super, absolutely super team who I've been working with for about 7 years because they came with me to JLL. But they're really excited about the product as well. So how do I maintain the integrity of the estate and BCP, documentation, transparency, and a super good team? But actually, they are really excited about the tooling because it means they just have less to look at, and they have to be. It's gonna be insights for them instead of them literally having to check, press, check it's okay. It's also making sure that they're getting early alerting. The other one as well is, why does RPA fail? And you've got a whole ton of root cause issues. So we have things like credentials and we have infrastructure issues. But actually one of our biggest ones is someone upstream goes and changes the user interface and doesn't tell us. So again, a big thing we established at HSBC was establishing those relationships with the ITSOs, like the sort of technology service owners. It is not fail-proof at all, and it's particularly problematic when you've got vendor products. So it's not even our internal tech teams, it's an external vendor team. And that kills us, but actually at least, again, it's a lot of transparency. Where are those relationships? Who do you hold to account? And then when it fails over, we just have to fix it as best as we can. And we also have really, really good production management incident systems. So we've set everything, having supported ops, we've got obviously the levels of alerting, everything now goes through, I think we use Azure ticketing, or something like, I think it's Azure. So we've got a whole ticketing system that, again, it's all about getting things back up. So for me personally, you've just got to manage it as an estate. And all the fights I have with tech, and the irony is that they're very interested in, and this has always been my experience actually, of and apologies, most of you are probably in technology, so understand who I'm speaking to. But the biggest issue I find is that technology are much more excited about the implementation of the solution, and being in operations, I'm stuck managing all the risk. So that's actually how we try and build that relationship. And actually we've come a long way, and it's a good partnership, to the point that now, when we bring in new products, we do talk about, you've got to look at all these things, and they get it, they're not signing contracts, etc.
Perfect. One more question or one more minute?
Speak fast.
Okay, right. What advice would you give to other organisations, especially here, about building a future-ready, resilient automation operation?
Okay, I think look at the whole ecosystem. So, as I've just said, but it's all interfungible, which is, again, what kills you on robotics implementation, assuming that digitisation is a good thing, which I think we all presumably assume it is, assuming we digitise the right thing. Not getting your development high quality will kill you, because you then spend all the time doing production assistance. Not getting your production management will kill you, because actually you'll then go auditing and you'll spend a year going through and upgrading everything. So I think for me it just has to be, hold yourself to a high bar, take your time to do it properly. As I said, for me, my biggest concern, which I say to all my team, and they're doing exponential delivery. So I think first year, 3 years ago, we took out 15 FTE in capacity. This year, we've done 210 FTE. The team size hasn't changed. We got really good at what we do. But I say to them, go faster, go faster. But the minute you don't do it to the right quality, we will all be spending next year doing remediation. So I think it is just really looking at the whole ecosystem. There's an interbalance on costs, so whatever you've shortcut on one side, you don't. I think the other one is be really exacting on the value of the tech. So again, with all the tech we've got coming in, it's like actually make sure you really understand it, and I think lots of people have said this today, pick the right tool. So I've got Alteryx where it should be, and I've got robotics where it should be Python, I've got Python where it should be workflow. I mean, it's like, oh my God, pick the right thing, only do it for add value, and make sure that it is 100% robust, because none of us want to be fixing production issues.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Do we have any time for questions? Are there any questions? And I think it's great to actually have someone from the business side, because we all get, like I said, get excited and carried away with tech.
I love working with tech, by the way. I just have to say that it's I couldn't do it without tech, but we all bring different strengths. So that's what I'm saying.
But it is, thank you very much. It is very useful to have the business view, because I think it's always useful to have that. Because at the end of the day, we're here to make business better and to make money and so on. The tech is the secondary thing. So any questions? Well, I think we'll have time for one.
I heard that you are having some trouble with what we call shadow IT, that are maybe custom scripts in Python made by corporations, stuff like that. Do you plan to substitute those scripts with proper SPA technology, or you are just going to?
So I would love to. So we have a rule. Once we've identified the use case, the first thing we look at is strategic tech. and then we drop down into low code, no code, and then pretty much the last thing is user-defined applications. So by the time we've got to a user-defined application, it's everyone else has said no, and they've either said no, we don't have the solution, we don't have the volumes to justify, it's too fragmented, So actually the point is we'd love to. And this is why C2 for me is so exciting, because I have lots of conversations with tech who come to me and say, oh, we don't like Python. I'm like, no, I get it, but I can't do anything else. And for me, Python and UDAs are better than manual. So again, we have a manual, low code, no code, well, it's more manual, tactical, strategic. Tactical is better than manual. Again, it's rules-based, it's consistent, it's transparency, you've got a process documented, you've gone through, So it's still better than, it's just not as good as. So, but I don't like it, and I'd rather be doing other stuff, but I can't because our processes are so fragmented, and so we've got to drive that control. So this is where actually I am really excited about the orchestration layer, because I'm literally having daily conversations with tech who are like, we don't like it, and I'm like, what else do you want me to do? So we need to put in more rigor and control, because they are the ones, I can tell you, everything we're doing, it's the UDA that's actually going to cause me the production issue. So, yeah.
Great. I think we've run out of time. Yeah. All right, brilliant. Please show your appreciation for that. Thank you very much.